Hello guys, today we have part 2 of the fun stuff, the tier list for the 100 subs, special videos I guess, the easy fun content, right, yeah. Today we have the Cortex. Now I play less Cortex, I started to play Cortex at the beginning of Beyond All Reason, but I swapped out to Armada because I like the Armada tanks a lot. But that being said, I have a decent amount of experience in Cortex, maybe not as much as Armada, so there might be some stuff that I might forget about Cortex. Additional caveats are that this, similar to the last video, doesn't include a lot of the hover, navy, air, and buildings because I feel like they are very similar to across the factions, as well as it all depends on the situation of the game and how the individual player will see them as valuable. So that all depends on stuff. So same what do you call it? Tier list rating. So we have S through C. Niche, which is not necessarily bad. It's just less common. D, which is kind of bad. And then Beyond All Reason. So Niche and Beyond All Reason are sort of outside the general tier list system. They're sort of their own little functions here. And we'll continue. So I will put the air constructors at the Beyond All Reason tier list. They are A tier because constructors are very important to you. I see another constructor here, another constructor here, a constructor here. If I see the other constructors, I will add them in. I forgot to mention, I do add the try to add the unique units from the faction into the tier list, so that's why there will be like some air, some water stuff. That is what it is. Okay. We will continue here. We've got the air constructors, the land constructors. Similar to the last video, the land constructors are considered better. The hover even are considered better because they have more build power, so they're better for their primary role as constructors. The air constructors are good because of their mobility and ability to build like Ragnaroks and stuff. Calamities for the Cortex, I think it's called. All right. Next, we have the Aggravator, which is practically the same as the Armada one, like pretty much the same stats, like very good rocket bot, meta determining. Alligator, which is a amphibious tank here, which is C tier because amphibious, you would only build them if you really need amphibious units, so they're going to go there. The Arbiter is similar to the missile truck from the Armada, and it's also going to go into the similar tier. It does its job as a long-range missile option. It's just not exceptional. It's just okay. We have what do you call it? A radar support bot. I don't know if I can find all of them here. I mean, here's one. There's a couple of them. They look kind of funny for me. Like I might not be able to tell them off the picture as easily. Now, there's definitely a few of them in here that I can't see right now, but all the support bots are a similar tier rating to the Armada versions. They're very important to your efforts as support units to get vision. So we have the Banisher, which is the unique tank to the Cortex. It's the equivalent of the Starlight. However, I think the Banisher is worse than the Starlight. It just doesn't have the range, and its attack rate is much slower than like a horde of Starlights for whatever reason. It fires missiles that are like disjointed a little bit, so that sort of hurts its like tracking in large clumps of Banishers. Banishers are really expensive, and I just don't see them that often. Their range doesn't compete to Starlights, and so I think the equivalent is just better. The Banishers do their job really well. They have a lot of damage, though, and they just obliterate whatever they shoot, so they go to B tier because they do their job decently, at least. Bedbug, similar to the Armada one, the mobile bomb, very good, slept on. I think it can cloak, and if you get these in the backline, they destroy. They're countered by the stealth detectors, though, and that's why they're there. Behemoth. I would put Behemoth above Banisher. Yeah. Behemoths aren't terrible. Like, when you see a Behemoth, you're like, oh god, it's so terrible. Like, I hate seeing that. But they are very vulnerable to Commander D-guns. These things are just like mobile turrets, and they're very tanky, very powerful, but like they have a lot of vulnerability. So they're just okay. They do the job as a mobile turret. We have the Brute, which is a good tank. We're going to put it at the same place as the Armada version. The Brute has a little more HP than the like Armada one, and that's very common across Cortex units, is that they just have a little more HP and make them more tanky. Generally speaking, Brutes are identical to Stouts, generally speaking. That's why they're in the A tier, very solid T1 tank. We have the Catapult, which is a very, very good T3 unit for the Cortex. It's a long-range artillery unit, and it saturates a large area with AoE. It is much better than the Vanguard, I think, from the Armada. So I think it's better, and it goes for the A tier because of that. It's better. It's very good. Okay, we have the Commando, which is going to go into the Beyond All Reason tier. I have seen like one Commando in my whole time of playing, and it almost did like amazing things, destroying reactors. It almost did, but it's just so expensive, and it's a very funny strategy. But Beyond All Reason, we'll need to see more data to know. But in theory, it can do like really cool stuff by destroying reactors. In theory, because what the Commando does, it's a paratrooper. You can fly it in on a transport, and if the transport gets destroyed, it just falls to the ground instead of being destroyed, and that's why it's able to infiltrate into the back lines. All right, we have the Cerberus, which is a A-tier unit. I think is it better than support units? I don't think so, but it's similar to the Prude in that it's the T2 unique geothermal vent that the Cortex built. This time it's a turret instead of a less reactive reactor. Yeah, that makes sense. Less explosive reactor. This is an offensive thing. I would say compared to the Prude, it is slightly better just because it has the offensive capabilities, and it can be very annoying for opponents. Very annoying. So because it shoots stuff, like it is a little more annoying, and so I think it's A tier, pretty good. All right, I forgot we got to do the Cortex Commander and the Decoy Commander. Same deal as the last video. The Commander is just the name of the game, D-gun stuff to destroy units instantly and buildings too. Gives income, he's got build power on him. Game rolls around him. Decoy Commander is the exact opposite. He is just, it's very funny. I've never seen anything crazy happen with Decoy Commanders as of yet. All right, we have the Dragon, which I think controversially goes into the top of C tier. Dragons cost 5,000 metal, which is the same as a T1 reactor, fusion reactor, which is like insanely expensive. And in my opinion, most people don't seem to use dragons correctly. Dragons really have only two ways of using them, which is one, you mass them up and fly into the backline and tank any anti-air they can get and just get to the reactor ASAP and destroy reactors. The second is as a defensive tool because they are very good on defense. The enemy needs to bring a lot of anti-air to the front line to deal with dragons, and that just makes it better for your side because now the enemy has to build a lot of anti-air. In my opinion, those are the only two ways you can use a dragon. I see a lot of people use dragons incorrectly where they'll use it and not attempt to, not attempt to go for reactors first because dragons are sort of like a one trick kind of thing. It's sort of like bombers as well. Once it's revealed, the enemy players start to react more. It's like across all air. It's like once it's revealed, people start to react even more to it. They'll build way more anti-air and stuff. So if you use a dragon and you initially just defend with it, I think you're using it wrong. I think you need to go for a attack on reactors first and then use it secondarily as defense against armies intruding in your territory. Additionally, I think a lot of people get baited into building dragons when they don't have the economy to do so, and so it really stalls people out. So there's a lot of problems, not necessarily with the unit, but with how people use the unit. In regards to its damage and stats and stuff, it's okay. It's okay. It's a lot of HP, very very mediocre attack damage and range and stuff. Yeah, it's just okay. So that's why it goes to the C tier. It's just got a lot of problems with how people use them. And so I'm putting them in the C tier so people aren't so brazen about using them. If you really are dead set on using the dragons, do what I think you should do, which is go for reactors first and then try to, once a dragon attack fails on reactors or something, and you still have leftover dragons or you still really want to use dragons, then you would use it defensively. All right, we have the Duck, which is an amphibious unit. It just goes to C tier. You build these if there's water, basically. If you really want to go amphibious or hover, whatever. Same deal as the one. Exploiter, also very good. I'm actually putting it above the support units, actually. The Exploiter, I have seen in recordings and gameplay and videos, the Exploiter is so good. There have been hero exploiters. You can put that bad boy in the front line or mid line behind your front line, and it will just change the course of the game. I've seen hero exploiters that just win the game for the Cortex. Exploiters are really good, okay? They're just expensive, right? They're 200 plus metal to build, but they are very good defensive structures on top of the metal extractor, so very good building. I think the advanced exploiters are deadly. Oh my god, dude! Like these are so good. I would actually put them like at the top of A tier. Actually, let me put them at the top of A tier. These guys are good. Like as Armada, me and my like cloaked metal extractor make me feel envious over the exploiter because the exploiter is so good. I think it's very good. It's like such a surprise to see them, and it's very annoying to deal with them if you're fighting into exploiters. So good. Okay, Fiend S tier. Better, yeah, Fiend. You know it, I know it. This is the meta unit, bot unit, fast rush down unit for the Cortex. It can self-destruct to do a larger AoE explosion. Very good unit. It's a pyromaniac. It just runs in and destroys stuff. It goes with the Twitcher, actually. And because the Twitcher can build the Fiends, the Twitcher is actually an S tier unit too. I'm going to put it above the Fiend, actually, because the Twitcher can build Fiends. And Twitcher is also a combat engineer as well, and so it's very good as a engineer too. This like unit is so good. These two units, key part of Cortex strategy right there. All right, we got the anti-air flak S tier. Obviously, you don't want to be stuck building anti-air bots. These like manticores and trashers. They're just, you don't want to be stuck building these. You want to build anti-air flak, either base flak or vehicle flak. Like, yeah, don't build these. Next, we got like this amphibious unit. Yeah, I think there's another amphibious unit that is unique to the what do you call it? The Cortex. That is like a missile hover, but I don't remember its name, and it might. I don't know if it's the Garbike. I think this is just a regular T2 tank here, T2 amphibious tank. We'll see it. Resbot S tier. Same deal. Like all the pros use it to get resources and resurrect things. Very key unit in every army here. Grunt is an S tier unit compared to the Pawn, which I believe I put at A tier. The Grunt is better because it does the same role, it's cheaper, it has less DPS but more range, and so it can actually beat Pawns in the T1 phase if you micro them appropriately. They're the lowest of the S tiers because for the Cortex, they don't have a tick equivalent. I guess you could consider their rovers, their rascals, the equivalent. So I'll actually put the rascal like in high A tier here, maybe just the like right about. I'll put them in A tier because honestly, you could make do with grunts. Grunts, you can make do with like I'll put them like right here. Yeah, but grunts, you can do it. Like I said, you can do the spamming with grunts or the rascals, but generally people will do it with the grunts because the grunts are just like they're like a Bowie knife. They're very versatile. They can be spammed. They beat Pawns in the T1 phase. Like they do basically everything Pawns do, just slightly better. Less DPS, of course, but it is what it is. So I like grunts more. Everyone likes not true. I would rather have grunts than Pawns, basically. They also have the same speed as Pawns, so that makes them really good. And that's why they can beat Pawns if you micro them perfectly. Hercules, air transport, you know it, I know it. We just remember that air transports are very good for your constructors as well as your commander. If you want to do funny strats running into the enemy base and blowing up everything, that is what it's for. Very good. Incisor, unlike the light tank from the Armada, which was S tier, I think Incisors are top of B tier. Maybe low A tier, depending on how you use them. I think they're the low A tier. I'm gonna be more gracious to them. I don't know, but you can still use them like blitzes. Like they are faster than both types of bots. They're just not that much faster. Their turret speed is kind of slow, and the turret speed is kind of slow. Their attack rate is a little slow. It's so. Their damage is like okay, it's good. It's good enough. But they're like other stats like their movement, their turret rotation speed is kind of slow. They're very bulky, which is a good plus for them. Very bulky for their tier. So I'll put them in A tier because you can use them like blitzes. It's just harder to do. Juggernaut, S tier, just below the Grave Robber. Juggernaut is so good. It's like the Titan equivalent for the Armada. I think in the Armada video, I said that they were like debatable which one was better. I would say the Juggernaut might be a little better actually, just because of the self-destruction explosion that it has when it's killed or it self-destructs and denies a little bit of its mass or whatever. So the Juggernaut can be very good. Obviously, it's the strongest, most powerful unit in the game that you can build. T3, very expensive, and sometimes it baits people into building them when they can't get it in time or whatever. So very strong unit, S tier, because it's just a very game-ending kind of unit. very important. The Karganeth, I don't know what it's called. It's like a low A tier unit. It's like similar to the Incisor. I would put it above the Incisor. In terms of usefulness, maybe above the transport as well, and usefulness actually above a Cerberus Turnip. Yeah, right here sounds about fine to me. It's a good. It can act decently as a frontline unit, but it might just have a little bit low HP and DPS for the frontline, but it can serve that role. It's kind of a little big, that's why. It can climb up walls, and so it's excellent for that. The Armada kind of lacks the ability to attack via cliffs. The Cortex has very good options for that. Similarly, the Termite does that, and so I will put the Termite just next to the Karganeth. Like, they do their job. I would say you would rather build a Karganeth than a Termite, just saying. Termites do their job really well. You would only build them, maybe I'll put them in B tier, just because you wouldn't build them outside of their role, actually. Yeah, you really wouldn't build these outside of their role. And yeah, maybe I thought, like, I'm not sure where they would go. They're about the same usefulness as these guys. I'll put them at the top. Why not? It's just because the Karganeth does the job like a little better at the later game. Just the later game. You need them HP in the late game to get close to the enemy, and so the Karganeth might do a little better. Termite does its job, though. It's a good unit. Compared to the Recluse, I think this is a little better than a Recluse. This just feels better to use, even though it has less range or whatever. I don't know why. Mammoth, almost S tier, actually. I would put that as low S tier. This might sound a little weird. Mammoths are actually really good units and really hard to deal with. I don't know how to explain it. Like, if you use Mammoths correctly, they are like a very unstoppable force. They attack everything. They're just like mobile turrets, mobile bases, like really good frontline unit. They do die to snipers. They die to snipers and like mainly snipers and like maybe starlights and stuff, but you need a lot of damage from far away to deal with Mammoths. Mammoths just shred apart most other main combat units, so like grunts, tanks, they'll shred them apart, basically. You need specialty units usually to beat Mammoths, and so Mammoths are very good. They are expensive, and so that's why I'm putting them at the bottom of this tier. Very expensive, and very slow, very slow. Their range is okay, just okay, to deal with those medium tier units. Or main combat units. I think this is the hover unit that I talked about. This is a unique hover unit. I think it's a hover missile tank. It shoots missiles or something. I've pretty much never seen them, so they go to the niche tier. Lashers, same deal with, what do you call it? The Armada tier list, which is right over here, actually. I put them in the C tier. Wait, no, that's not right. Where'd the missile trucks go? Right in the B tier. Yep, I would agree. Lashers go into B tier. I would put them above. I put them above a Termite, actually. I think they're more useful than a Termite. Banisher, honestly, should get more love here, maybe. Maybe Banishers can go up here. Banishers do their job pretty well, but they're sort of outclassed by Starlights. But in terms of like usefulness, I think they're more useful than a Lasher. For more parts of the game, Banisher is still useful. Lashers, like same deal as Armada, the missile tank trucks need to be used as missile tanks, and so you really need to commit to the strategy, have a lot of them, and abuse their range in the T1 phase. Outside of the T1 phase, they're done for. Muskrat, I believe this is a amphibious constructor, so it goes down here. It's very good. Engineers are all important. Negotiator, I believe I just put that at C tier, and honestly, it's so redundant between these two. Like, I don't know why you would go like. It's so redundant. Like, these basically do the same job. I don't know what the difference is. Like, functionally, like, they do the same thing. Like, they're both vulnerable to rushdowns. Like, they're the same thing basically as an arbiter. Like, there's very little difference in my opinion. You won't notice that. What is this? Oh, this must be a support detection bot. Yeah, support detection vehicles right here. Jammer and radar. Yeah, same deal. They're in the high A tier here, medium A tier. Poison Arrow, I kind of forget because I've never seen this, or I very seldomly see this built, so I'm putting it in the niche here. Like, I pretty much never see this built. Quakers, I'm going to put them above the, right here. Similar deal to the Armada version, the Mauser, like this is the T2 vehicle artillery, and those are very useful things to have. They can deal with snipers, or they can combat and trade with snipers. So they have a little less range than Mausers, so that makes them a little worse than the Armada equivalent, but these are still very good units to have. Yeah, we got the, mobile anti-nuke, and the Savior, and same deal as Armada. If you like using mobile anti-nuke as opposed to base anti-nuke, you would use this, and this is why it's in the top of niche tier. All right, we have the Sheldon, which goes to S tier, right below the Grave Robber, in my opinion. Like, the Sheldon is the meta for Cortex. If you are playing Cortex, you play Sheldon meta every game, basically. Sheldon meta all the time, dude. What can you say? You and I both know how the Sheldon works. It's a long-range motor unit with basically very little AoE, but it can kite. It has decent mobility. It shoots while moving backwards. Like, very good kiting unit. You get the most effectiveness when you're using it and microing it. Pairs with the support units as well as the sumo, which I will put in top of B tier. Actually, the wielder from the Armada I put at top of B tier. The sumo, I think sumo is actually a little better. I'll put it at the bottom of A tier. Sumo has a lot of like single target damage that the wielder does not have for whatever reason. The sumo still does really well against like spam, but it also does really well against single targets for some reason. It's got really good DPS, that's why. The wielder just does AoE, and so it struggles against single targets. But the sumo is very tanky. I believe it also hits air units, whereas the wielder cannot. And so it's a little better than the wielder, in my opinion. It pairs with the Sheldon, just like how snipers pair with wielders. They come from the same factory. Both of these are bots. Sheldons are fast and long range and squishy, while these are slow and short range, and tanky, and they deal with spam that the Sheldon cannot deal with, the rushdown units that the Sheldon cannot deal with. And so they pair together, and you pair it with your support units here, and that you've got your classic Cortex army, which is also S tier, basically. All right, next we have the Shiva, which I will put at the bottom of S tier, just above the Mammoth. Shivas are really good. They're like tanks, basically. They feel very similar to bulls with their main weapon, but they also have the like Arbiter's rocket, basically. And so they're basically 2 units in one, and that's why they're tier 3. They're expensive, but fairly cost effective. Very good T3 unit. So I put them at the bottom of S tier. Their downsides are it's a T3 unit, so it's expensive and it's hard to field, basically. You need a lot of time to get these out. And you need a decent number of them, because otherwise it's just a very expensive tank, and you can deal with that. Shuriken, S tier. I'm going to put this above the aggravate. Shurikens are really good. I'm going to put them right below Fiend. Shurikens are an amazing support unit to help your allies. Anyone can pretty much build these. It's very cheap to build. Shurikens are just they fly around and they stun stuff, and you just need a swarm of them, and you can stun stuff and change the course of battles. I've seen so many pros use these, and that's why Shurikens go to S tier. Spybot goes to A tier. I'll put it next to the Scout, above the other support units. Maybe just above the Scout. It's a Spybot. We talked about this, how they're like very good for like running around and stunning stuff. I believe. I don't remember if these guys actually have the ability to stun, but I think they should. Regardless, I would still put them in A tier, because it's for the Cortex. It's what they have. Thugs also A tier. Below, actually, Thugs for. I don't know why, but Thugs always feel pretty good. I'm just going to put them ahead of the Incisor. Probably because Incisors feel mediocre. Thugs feel pretty good compared to them. Of course, you can't really do run-bys, but Thugs are still pretty good. So I'm putting them there. Tigers Tigers don't feel as good as Bulls, but they feel good in a different way in that they're very tanky. They have less AoE and less DPS, but they're very tanky. They have a little less range, but they're, like I said, they're very tanky compared to the Bulls. Like, per mass, a swarm of Tigers is really, really mass efficient in making HP. So I would put them above the Brute. They're like a better version of the Brute. Catapults are still very useful to have, so I'll put them right there. That makes sense to me. Trapper is a Minesweeper. We'll put them here. Same deal. Mines are technically mass efficient for dealing with enemy units, but it is very tedious to build and micro intensive, and that's why we put it here in the niche tier. If you like using it, then this is your niche that you like. Tremors are, in my opinion, very mediocre. I would put them in like C tier, honestly, like maybe like above the C tier, like. Yeah, I'd rather have a behemoth than a tremor. Like dragon even. Would I rather have a dragon? I would rather have a dragon than a tremor though. Tremors can do two things, which are deal with incoming spam waves, like if they're just spamming out units in a line, as well as slow pushing. But they slow push so poorly that it's almost not worth using them. They also take so much material, and they can only fire when they're not moving and like looking at the enemy. And for that reason, it's so difficult to use that I think that they go to C tier here. They have their niche, and that's why I think they're better than these missile trucks, because these missile trucks, they're like so-so. Like they won't be able to deal with spam, but this guy can. So I put them above those guys. Next, controversially, we have the Pounder, which very similar to how the Centurion works, in my opinion. It can deal with T1, but anything else, it just loses instantly, basically. And even dealing with T1, it's so-so. Like, it's so-so because its range isn't good, its speed isn't good, its damage is good, its tankiness is good, but its other stats aren't so great. And it's similar to the Centurion, so I'm going to put it in the C tier here. I usually don't like building these. Some people apparently really like these. If you really like these, it would either go to the top of the niche tier, which is what you like to do, or it would go into the B tier here. But for that reason, I'm putting it in the C tier. I'll put it at the bottom of the C tier here. Next, we have the Tzar, which is decent unit. It's like the Fat Boy. Tzar is better than a Karganath, in my opinion, to see and have and to field. Tzar is a little more versatile than Karganath just because it's tankier, and I think its range is very similar. So its DPS is very similar. Its Alpha Strike is a little better than the sustained damage of the Karganath. Tzar can AoE its allies. It's just the same thing as a Fat Boy. It's expensive. It comes out of the vehicle factory instead, and so it's not too bad. It's okay. It's okay. It's a good unit. Good unit. Next, we have, I put this in just so I could talk about it. Bombers, in my opinion, are like right here. I didn't include a bomber in the Armada tier list, but the Armada bomber would be in a similar position, just maybe a little less than the Cortex one, depending on your preference, actually, because the Cortex one, the Cortex bomber, like the T1 bomber, it hits it like in a circle, whereas the Armada one hits in a line. So it just comes down to preference on which one you like. Some people think the Cortex one is a little better because of its circle attack. And we've got the Wolverine, which I believe is S tier as well for the T1 phase. I think it goes... For the T1 phase, its importance cannot be understated. Like, is it better than Fiends? Yeah, I think it's better than Fiends. I think it deserves its spot like somewhere between here and here. I think because you're using the Wolverine probably in your T1 phase in the front line a lot more than the Juggernaut, I'll put it just above the Juggernaut. And with that, I think this is the list I have. If we were to compare to the Armada one, the Cortex has a lot more S tier units in my opinion. Although like some of the Cortex units are just like very, very good at what they do and are just hard to counter because of how they are. But the caveat is that Cortex units are more expensive, so like that's the deal. Maybe not the Fiend, but like Shiva and Mammoth, like very expensive, but they're very good units compared to like there's only a Marauder. I don't think most T3 from our Armada are as good, like the Razorback and the Thor aren't so good compared to the Shiva. Basically, Shiva is such a good like T3 unit. It basically replaces your T2 tank. You instead of having a very good T2 tank like the Armada has, you have a very good T3 general purpose pseudo tank. Basically, it's like a walker unit. Very good. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Shivas can walk along the water's bed like amphibious, I think, and that's why they're good. They're good. Very good. Very good. Technically, I guess you could do like a Marauder style attack on Supreme Straight, I think I've seen that before. It's just a lot slower because they move much slower than the Marauders in water. But with that, that's the tier list. Thanks for giving me 100 subs. I hope you enjoyed these like special videos. And this is, of course, a subjective tier list that makes it the best tier list ever because it was made by me, the omniscient one. I said this in the last video. It's a joke. It's a joke. Take this tier list with a grain of salt. But in general, the S, A, and B ones are generally the good ones that you will see a lot or should make use of. The C, niche, D, and beyond all reason ones, I mean, maybe the C, niche, and D ones. These ones, these four, you'd be more hesitant to use. Engineers, of course, don't actually belong in the all reason tier. They go into A tier. They just are down here for aesthetic purposes for the tier list to look more balanced. And with that, that's the tier list. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.